Good evening. This is the Lane Transit Special Person, the public forum for the Finance Committee meeting agenda. And all of a sudden my head, I just came here. Anyway, so the meeting is called order. Are there any remote attendees? We have Gino. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Pete Knox, who is our new treasurer. Thank you very much for stepping up to do that. Ready for roll call. Lawrence Green.
Here.
Gino Grimaldi.
Here.
Pete Knox.
Here.
And Susan Cox. Okay. Are there any people who want to testify? Anyone else? Public comment?
We don't have anyone online for public comment or in the room today.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to start with the agenda. I'd like to invite Pam Strutz to speak and give us the report review. Thank you, Pam.
So I'm going to speak just directly from the report that you have in your packets tonight. So if you remember, this time of year, each year, we're required to give the board a report from the previous fiscal year. And it's always a preliminary and estimated report. It's required by the Oregon statute to do that, to ensure that transit district boards get at least one report a year. And for us, in fact, when I first came to work here, I didn't believe it when Christina told me that, well, oh, we have to have that report within 30 days. But I did, because we report on a regular basis to you all. And I am glad that we're able to do that. This particular report includes the majority of the expenses that are for fiscal year 25 in the operating fund. In our other funds, the capital projects funds and our special funds, those take a little bit longer to reconcile. So we're still working on the grant expenditures and then also the grant revenue for those other funds. But for our general fund, I feel confident being able to tell the board that we will again end with a surplus this year. Last year's surplus was about $7 million. This year, I feel that we'll be in that same neighborhood again. Currently, our general fund doesn't show quite that much, but we still have two grants that we haven't recorded in here, and that is our operating expenditures reimbursement from our federal grants, and then we also have STIF that pays for our increase in service. And those two are each about $2 to $3 million, and those are still yet to be recorded on here. So good news on the revenue side. I just wanted to bring to your attention under the actual to date column, towards the middle of the first page where it says total all revenue. And just a couple of lines up from that is transfer from general fund. And that is, you can see a big difference between our budget, which was 7.7 million, and then the actual to date transfer, which is 20 million. That has to do with our supplemental budget. So as part of our supplemental budget, we took $18 million and allocated $6 million of that towards our employee benefits, which that has taken place. We did put an extra $6 million toward paying down the liabilities in our pension plans. $5 million towards the salary plan, which was the one that needed a little bit more shoring up, and then $1 million to pay for the COLA that we approved on the ATU pension plan. So that has taken place. The other piece of that was $12 million that we transferred to the Sustainable Services Reserve. That is an LGIP, that's our local government investment pool that the state of Oregon provides for entities to be able to put money into that. And then we pass all of the audit tests for having our money in a safe place. And so that $12 million has also been transferred. That would happen before the end of the fiscal year. So we currently have about 23 million in our sustainable services fund. And that is available to use for any operating purpose. That was the intent of that fund. So any questions on the revenue side? Okay, on the expenditure side, on the you can see at the bottom of that first page again is our total general fund expenses. As of the date of this report, we were at about 92% of budget compared to where we ended last year, which was 90.6%. So I do feel confident that we will not spend our entire budget again this year on expenses. And that just goes to speak to how hard our department managers work to try to make their budgets accurate. And that if they do have they're not of the mind frame that if you don't spend it, you lose it. You know, there are some governmental entities that have that mind frame. That is not how we operate. Each budget year stands alone, and we try to accurately predict what we're going to spend each year. And just because you didn't spend it all last year doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to come around and say, okay, you don't get that much this next year. And so, although I have been known to say that on a few line items. So I am pleased with where we ended up. On the personnel side, we will be under budget on that, mostly just because we budgeted for 215 bus operators, and we did not have that many during the year. That would have been a huge stretch for us from where we started. We started in about a little bit less than 190 at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we did end up, well, it was in the mid, it was about 185, and then we ended up at 197. So we did definitely increase, but we did have a significant savings in our budget because we didn't go all the way to 215. So we budgeted again 215 for this year, and so we'll see where that takes us. So any questions on the general fund? Expenses. Okay, on the back of the page now, this just shows our expenditures and how they compare to budget in each of our other funds. The capital projects fund is the one that has the biggest difference, and what impacted that was the delay in our fleet. We had anticipated that we would receive 8 to 10 buses before the end of the year, and we would be paying for them out of fiscal year 25, but we had a couple of them arrive. They weren't ready to be on the road yet, and so we don't have to pay for them until they are 100% ready to go on the road and rolling, and that did not happen. So that's why that one is showing so much under budget. And then the other ones are approximately what we expected, other than point to point. Point to point is our small fund. That's the one that has to do with alternative transportation, pilot programs, and the Safe Routes to School is our biggest program that's in there. And there, we just had some, turnover in the marketing department, and they had a lot of things going on, and we didn't do very much with that in the fiscal year 25, but we are back on track now, and we actually had a project that came in right at the end of the fiscal year on that, and so I anticipate that we'll be back up spending what we expected to spend in this fiscal year. Okay, so currently, like I said, we're showing that 13.8 million surplus over across all of our funds. That's not just the general fund. And most of that has to do with underspending our budget. So any questions on the report?
Surplus is good.
Yeah, it's good.
Those buses are up and running now. They're in service now, the Gillies.
August 24th, we found a problem with two software programming issues. Billy's on site this week and next week resolving it.
So it's a probably hit in the next couple, they'll hit this month.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Or next month at the
Yeah,
latest?
it'll be, I doubt if I'll see them on August, but probably in
By
September.
September. So
So-
the catch up then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and the only other thing that impacted, that we're going to have to deal with at some point this year is our STIF budget. So in our STIF budget, we had anticipated that those would be coming in fiscal year 25. STIF is the match for those for those buses. And because of the timing of that, we weren't able to build that into our STIF budget for this next biennium. We had the end of the biennium this last June. And so that match is not built in. We have enough money in STIF to be able to make that adjustment, but we're waiting to see kind of what happens on some of the other pilot projects that we have. And then we're allowed to do one amendment to our STIF budget during the biennium. So we will be able to do that, and we will be able to move money around, but we're just holding off on that right now to see if there's anything else that we need to move around and to cover those buses. So. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Pete, any questions, or we're all done?
Not at this time.
Okay, Pam, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the staff update on grants and federal funding. And so would like Sam Quatroco. No, Sam
KQ.
Yeah, I apologize. And Jack Ramsey, give that report.
Yeah, I can start us off.
Go for it.
Well, good evening, and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Jack Ramsey, and I am a Lane Transit Grant Administrator. The purpose of my presentation is to bring everyone onto the same page regarding the district's grants portfolio. Currently, LTD manages 34 grants, 26 from the federal government and 8 from the state of Oregon. The total grant funding currently obligated to LTD stands at $73 million, with anticipated spending of $35.5 million this year. Grants comprise a total of 15% of LTD revenue. Grants awarded to LTD are either discretionary grants or formula grants. Formula grants are calculated based on a number of factors like overall population, low-income population, population density. Additional factors include bus passenger miles and operating expenses. Discretionary grants are competitive grants, and they're awarded based on merit. They're not guaranteed. Grants themselves pay for two main categories of projects, state of good repair and improvements. State of good repair represents maintaining what we have. An example might be keeping our fleet running. Improvements are adding something new, like building a new facility. State of good repair and improvement projects impact our facilities, fleet operations, frequent transit network, technology, and infrastructure, so the entire business. The most significant spending, I will say, out of the grants goes toward replacing our buses. An average bus has a useful life of 12 years or 500,000 miles. The majority of our funding comes from the Federal Transit Administration. 24 of our grants currently come from the FTA, and that represents $41.5 million. We can go to the next slide. I'd like to briefly highlight a few projects that demonstrate the real-world impact of grant funding. If you've recently visited our Glenwood campus, you may have noticed, in addition to the main facility, The new addition is called the Operations Command Center, and it will improve our capacity for operations, including dispatch, operator training, and security. Another one you may have noticed is the Eugene Station modernization. The public funds went toward re-roofing the facility, improvements to the restroom, the addition of real-time displays, and as well as a crosswalk expansion, installation of energy-efficient lighting, a new PA system, security improvements. And I'd just like to note that LTD hires local contractors whenever possible to feed that funding back into the local economy. An exciting program that's coming soon is called the Trip Planner app. That project includes the acquisition of a mobile trip planning and payment application that integrates a variety of transportation options, including transit, cycling, pedestrian, and bike share. Additionally, we've got fixed route infrastructure, and I'd just like to touch on this one because it really demonstrates kind of some of the banal projects maybe that we undertake, but a critical project to keeping the buses running and keeping everybody going to their healthcare appointments, jobs, et cetera. Fixed route infrastructure improvements include often updating signage, shelters, furniture, and other equipment at various stops along Lane Transit District's fixed route transit network. The goal is to increase accessibility, comfort, and passenger safety at various boarding areas. To briefly touch on the state grants that we have 8 grant applications that are currently in process. So these are applications for funds that have already been submitted. We're in the process of requesting 10 new buses, as well as the required inspections and the training that goes along with purchasing rolling stock. That's what we call buses. And as well as Buy America audits. So something that comes up that a lot of folks don't necessarily think about is we try to make sure that we're sourcing these buses from American providers. And we go through, and it's actually a Buy America audit that is before delivery and then after delivery, where you go through and you make sure that 70% of the items on the bus were built here in America. Another critical grant that we've submitted an application for is for preventative maintenance, which will cover preventative maintenance for the next 2 fiscal years. We also have a grant out there for improving some of our most frequently used transit routes. Some of you may ride the MX buses, and that funding goes toward keeping them running. Another spotlight I'd like to bring is to the Regional Mobility Enabling Service Hub. We call it Regional Mesh. This is a program that's gotten some publicity, but it's really where kind of the rubber meets the road as far as a lot of the folks who use our services. The Regional Mesh will create a mobility management platform integrating different mobility services into a single public-facing trip planning application, a regional service planning platform, and it will deploy on-demand microtransit, specifically in the Bethel area in West Eugene. So what does that mean? In Bethel, and to quote the superintendent from the Bethel School District, we are committed to providing robust programming for our students outside of regular school hours. Lack of transportation is a barrier to participation. When students are able to join our activities, this increases their engagement, adds to a sense of belonging, and knits our Bethel community closer together. The connection transit provides between school and social services leads to a healthier community overall. Thanks for your attention. Our next speaker is Sam Kelly Quattrochi. Sam QK. Perfect. And he'll be discussing some of the current legislative funding updates, and but I'd be happy to answer any questions before then.
I have a question on the 8 applications in process. What is the timeline on learning if we're successful? So
Yeah, so it depends on the application, kind of the program. So those discretionary grants that I mentioned, they take a little while longer to get back to us because they have to go through a formal review process and they're scored against others.
okay.
So that can take, I've had grants take a year to be reviewed. The formula grants are a lot quicker. Those are funds that have already been kind of designated to us. We just have to apply and say, this is what we're going to do with the funding, and here are the eligible costs that are going to be associated. So that can be, gosh, formula. I'd have to get back to you
Right,
on the exact, but
Sure.
yeah, it's a quick turnaround.
Good, thank you. Other questions for Jeff?
And I would just point out, one thing that the committee might not be aware of is that before that we can go to the FTA to ask for any money, we have to have already gotten approval from our local transportation board and be assigned what we not so affectionately referred to as our STIP number. But that's our, we have a great working relationship with our local transportation board, but before we can even talk to the FTA, they want to make sure that our local area knows that, okay, this is what LTD plans to do. We usually go out 2 or 3 years in that planning, and it has a lot to do with our CIP process as well. So it's not just us, making that decision. We have to go to our local people as well.
Yeah, great point.
Ready for Sam?
Sure, happy to hop in. So, good evening, all. Sam Kelly-Petroki. I'm the Government Relations Manager. Sam KQ is also fine. Whereas Jack gave you a very good narrow view or a third view of grants, I'll be kind of pulling things out several thousand feet, looking at the kind of federal lay of land, state level, where things are at as well. So federally, where we are, we're working on the appropriations process right now. Appropriations is just the federal government setting their budget for their fiscal year. October 1 is when their fiscal year starts. They got another month and a half or so. Of the 12 or so appropriations, the one we care about most is Transportation, Housing, and Urban Design, or THUD, because we all need more acronyms. Coming out of the House and the Senate, they've marked up their versions of the bill. There's about a $5.5–6 billion difference in the two bills right now, with the House side cutting drastically and the Senate bill approving about a couple $100 million more than we currently have in this fiscal year. So they're going to have a pretty big fight ahead of them, a lot of negotiations to work through. Of that $5.5 billion, about 1.7 is transit funding that's cut on the House side. The remaining mostly is that housing and urban development side, the HUD, which is Medicaid, partially food stamps as Lot 1, Section 8 housing. Those are a lot of the priority issues for the House right now. Of note, the House bill passed directly on party lines. The Senate bill was much more bipartisan, with only one no vote of the, I think it's 60 or so members on their subcommittee. So they've got a lot of work to do. They're in recess right now, so hopefully they're doing a little bit of work on that while they're on vacation or doing what they need to do. I've mentioned our federal lobbying team, Smith Garson, before. We still have them. We still meet every week with them as well, so they're tracking things for us, keeping us informed, letting us know if we need to be in DC, if we need to write more letters, meet with our folks here in the district. So we're still actively involved in that process, knowing that it'll be a pretty busy month and a half. We're kind of where we are last year with this very contentious House and Senate. Most likely will lead to a continuing resolution or a CR, which is they'll pass this year's budget again and keep it forward. More pessimistic sides are maybe seeing a government shutdown more likely in our future, early October. It just feels more and more contentious every day. It's really hard to know with any certainty where we're going to be 2 weeks from now, let alone 2 months from now. Shifting to state side, where we are, the session ended in late June with a bit of a kind of wet blanket ending for transportation with no package being passed. The transportation package would have included gas tax for ODOT, the cities and counties, bridges, rail, some ferry stuff, and then transit was all included in there. In the final hour, even the governor came down, tried to get some kind of package through. That ultimately failed. So nothing got passed. Nothing was taken away, but nothing was increased. So we have since seen cuts in Rogue Valley Transit, TriMet up in Portland. ODOT was threatening and then unthreatened to cut lots of people off. So lots of reactions to that. The governor's called a special session for the end of the month. Friday, the 29th of August, the House will meet. Then we'll have a nice little weekend. And then Labor Day on the 1st, the Senate will meet. And they will negotiate through a transportation package only during those 2 days. Special session is deep in rules. They have to meet in person. They have to meet for so many days. So very complicated kind of process, but they got to get it going and get it done quick. In the package, there is an increase in STIF, so our statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, an increase from 0.1 to 0.2%, which is a doubling, which has kind of been my challenge to get away from that language and talk more about it's 1 penny for every $10, it's now 2 pennies for every $10 you earn. Overall, what we're hearing, transit and STIF aren't too controversial. I think both sides of the aisle understand how important it is. It's really the ODOT issue of it all. They've gone through quite a few controversies recently, and because it's a package bill, we all rise and fall with ODOT, unfortunately. So we'll see if they can find some compromise between refunding ODOT and the gas tax and increasing accountability measures. There were quite a few ideas before session ended on what that might look like. So we'll see what comes out of the process. Overall, it should be a great Labor Day weekend. I'm thrilled to be up in Salem. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll see all of you there working alongside me. After that, things will kind of calm down for a while, and then we'll see what short session brings us next calendar year. So this will be our last big push for a while, hopefully. Happy to take any questions or things you want to dive into deeper, but that felt like a pretty good place to start.
I have a question about the special session. Do you think that there will be equity in how funds are allocated between Portland and that part of the state and the rest of the state?
I think because there are no projects in this bill. The last transportation package included special projects, so the I-5 corridor, some of the bridges in Portland, those were more Portland focused because we needed, at the time, that focus. I think it'll be a little more equitable. It is a gas tax. Everyone pays a little more. STIF does go back to where there are ridership and where there are people, which naturally favors larger metropolitan regions. So in a sense, we'll all pay a little more, but an increase in $100 million for Portland is much more than $200,000 for some of the smaller communities or tribal communities. So yes, it'll be equal, but will be equitable, I think, is up for debate.
Okay.
Nothing intentionally favoring them, but just the way these funds are allocated, it happens to favor bigger, denser areas.
So for both the federal and the state funding, you talk about writing letters, contacting our delegation and so on. Is there anything that we can do as a board and as public supporters?
Yeah, currently we're having meetings one-on-one with state delegates right now. They're looking to kind of be in the district and kind of talk to us. So it's been going great. Like I said, pretty strong support there. When session starts, I think being aware of what it is, it'll be pretty quick. It'll be a lot of the work I'll be doing beforehand. I mean, truly in the moment, we won't have time for weeks to be up in Salem having meetings. It'll be a day of hearings and a quick vote. We'll be tracking that, making sure we're staying aware, providing testimony as needed. Federally, we're looking into what that looks like. A visit to DC is probably in our future. Definitely trying to reach out to the Congresswoman, especially for her, what she needs from us, how we can support her on the House side. Senators seem a little more engaged and willing to work on that process.
Thanks.
Closely related to that, DOT is asking for feedback on their strategic plan. So we're going to digest what's there, and then we'll probably come back to the board to ask for, if we draft some recommendations for to be sent under the board's cover.
Are all of the transit districts in Oregon, are they pretty solidly together? Is it a collaboration in terms of what the asks are?
State or federal?
State.
Mostly. There are some challenges in the TriMet area up in Portland with some of the districts. TriMet's views of auditing have been claimed to be overly stringent and stricter than necessary. So they're working through that process. It's got pretty public over during session with some bills that were very surprising that were kind of a direct response to that. There is a rulemaking process happening right now, a rule advisory committee, a RAC, Cosette Reese is on it for LTD, and they're going through a lot of really detailed, really technical things, including how are funds distributed, what do we do with in-district versus out-of-district, should the counties have more say versus the agencies over how STIF is spent. So they're working through a lot of those really deep in the weeds kind of projects. But for the most part, I think all transit's behind an increase. We think it's a good idea, but work to be done for sure.
And they're situated differently financially. So recently, TriMet is going to reduce service over the next few years, and that's really a backlog of deferred maintenance, the rail cars. But then also down in Rogue Valley, and they rely more on STIF funding, so they've had to have layoffs. Fortunately, so Pam and I talked about this the other day. The decisions that were made a few years ago in our posture have put us in a different position for now. That could change rather quickly should Washington decide to do something different. So we'll be tracking that. So that's very much a fluid situation at the federal level.
Thank you. Sam, appreciate the good work you do.
Absolutely.
Other questions, comments? Gino, do you have any questions?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to review upcoming Finance Committee and Budget Calendar schedule and discuss the committee's role. The upcoming meetings that we have scheduled now are October 4th, Budget Committee November, and then December, the Finance Committee meeting. Sort of been in conversation about the whole layout of our meeting, so.
Yeah, and even the February meeting, over the last couple of years, we've tended to pull the budget committee together a little bit early to have a preliminary review of the CIP and long-range financial plan. So even that meeting in February could turn out to be a budget committee meeting in reality. And so that basically leaves the finance committee meeting about 3 times, in the off budget season. And then for the first 6 months of the year, then it's all the budget committee meetings. So we wondered from the board members that are on this committee, what would you like to have the finance committee be? Are there some important topics that you feel like are better discussed here at a smaller group rather than at a full board meeting, or anyway, or would you consider just having the financial and the grant reports at the board level are included in the consent agenda, and then just reserve, just keep the budget committee meetings that are required?
I feel like we get really good information on a regular basis in the board reports, and that structure's changed a bit from what it was when the budget committee, the finance committee seemed more relevant, I guess. I think there's a part of it that's redundancy, not just for the board, but for the staff, which I think I'm certainly comfortable with eliminating as it is right now. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, so I've been noodling on this for quite a bit, and I think a lot of the role of this committee has already kind of gone to the board itself, because I think I said to multiple people that I thought that we should get rid of this committee, but I'm going to revise my statement there. I think most of the time we can cover the finance stuff in the board meeting. I'd like to have the full board. I'm speaking as a treasurer. Now, I'd like to have the full board have an understanding of what's going on with our finances, not just the 3 people who sit on this committee. We're running, as has been pointed out, we're running into a time period where things are going to be interesting both at the state and federal level. And Well, we're not in a bad position, as Jameson said, that could change very, very quickly depending on what either the state or federal government decides to do or not do. So what I actually would suggest is that this committee kind of move towards more of an ad hoc role. Since like if the board gets really busy with policy making stuff that's not budget related or contract related, and we need that time, we can use this committee to deal with some that stuff, especially the contract stuff, which we in the past we've passed those contracts in this committee and then put that in the consent agenda to save. It does save time, but it doesn't mean that everybody in the I don't I have no authority on my fellow board members, but so I have no expectation that everybody's going to watch this meeting, even though tonight we have 4 of us here, but you got the other 3. So I know I'm being really worried about this, but I think they say we move this to more of an ad hoc role, bring it back when it's needed and we're going to get really busy. Yeah, budget committee, I think it's a separate animal. I'm not making any statements about it because it has a legal distinction and a legal charge that this committee does not. So I think as we've been doing these things, as we're doing the contract stuff in the regular board meetings, and Pamela and I and Jameson have a meeting set up monthly already to talk about the finance stuff and how it's going to be brought to the board. And as we do that, what my ask of my fellow board members is to communicate what you want to see and what you don't. I know what I want to see, but I can't speak for Susan or Lawrence or Gino. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I think a lot of good things you have been contemplating, but I also think, when the financial stuff, when you're talking about like the state and federal and some of the concerns that may need to be addressed, seems to me that that's a whole board function. That's something that, I would feel more comfortable with the whole board having a discussion about it and making those decisions. And your idea of a ad hoc or as needed makes a lot of sense to me. And especially since you're meeting monthly, you'd be able to alert any issues or concerns. So, Lawrence, what do you think?
You're putting on like the redundancy. It would be nice to not necessarily have to hear things twice.
Right.
I think my concern is like maybe it would just went to the like the normal board meetings. I just don't want to feel like it's like a speed run of the information. Just kind of make sure it's not like the time and space to like communicate, what's going on. But again, like, how do you do that and not like make the board meeting like that much longer? So, that's, I guess, my only real concern with like eliminating this. But again, like, the redundancy is also a thing. And it would be nice to have the other board members also be in the know. So.
What about something like maybe to get that information maybe 2 weeks before a board meeting, so that could be digested, because it is a lot of information, and maybe, one meeting a quarter, that the board meeting be extended a little bit if there's going to be finance. Does that make sense?
I don't want to speak in front of Gino. I don't know if you want to gather his, but it could work a couple different ways. The idea of an ad hoc for special circumstances seems appropriate. Having a regular financial report in every single month elevates it to being top of mind, especially at this time. And we could always call out what the changes are, and if we need to do something deeper, we could always do that. I'd also point out that we meet with the budget committee 3 times. 3 times. That also provides an opportunity to do a deeper dive in terms of how those numbers are impacting our long-range financial plan, how we develop our capital plan, our CIP, our community investment plan, which I call a capital plan, and our operations budget as well. So I think we have those meetings already baked in, and then having those touch points both with Pete as treasurer, not to play accountant, but to highlight, here's some big things, and then have commentary around the financial reports at every meeting should help us not to miss a beat. Recall that the part of the purpose of this meeting was because we didn't have a robust financial report, or it took so long manually to pull together, and also to review the contracts. So we already reviewed the contracts coming to the board at the board meeting. If we add a standing, financial report as part of the CEO report or other report, where it could be as easy as, here are the things that are changing, here's where we're out of the budget, and then we can dive deeper if we need to there. So I think it could work that way well.
Gino?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with moving to ad hoc and also comfortable with Pete and staff deciding when to call us together for something to talk about. For example, if we saw federal funds disappearing, overnight, it might be good to call this committee together, talk about how we're going to process that issue and things that the board might need to make good decisions in planning moving forward. So those are the type of big issues that I would see this group getting involved in. But if Pete and staff want the input of this committee, more than happy to meet.
I guess I feel like there is a pretty solid system of checks and balances. The way that things have kind of emerged in terms of the process and the capacity that staff have now for reports compared to several years ago. So how does that sound to you, Lawrence? We're not. Yeah. So should we bring this to the next board meeting? We'll put it on the agenda. And Pete, you can kind of introduce and talk about it. Okay, good. So Jameson, you and Pam, you feel okay about that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, especially with the monthly meetings that we'll be having, because then my main concern is the board getting the information that they want, and that makes sense to them and that they're interested in. And so if I have the opportunity to talk to Pete on a regular basis, I feel like that I can provide that.
Okay, Pete, it's on you. Okay, are there any other agenda items? Okay, if there's nothing further, I adjourn the meeting and we can all go out into that very hot day. Thank you.
Good night, all.
I have been told.